Swim check 1, 2. Bike check 1, 2. Run check 1, 2. I think we're ready. Let's try this. Welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck podcast, a podcast where we explore the sport of triathlon from a variety of perspectives to help beginner triathletes on their journey. I am your host, Nashonda Shines. Well, welcome back to another edition of Try Beginner's Luck. This is also known as your transition area, where we will decompress here and not be distracted, because guess what? We are not turning a blind eye to the reality of what's going on around us, but we are choosing it not to let it drain our batteries. We're going to control the controllables. We can't fix the whole world at once, but we can control our effort, our kindness, and our community. We are also going to fuel the fire. I'm here to provide you with information and stories to help you cross your personal finish lines, regardless of what's happening on the sidelines. So when you think of USA Triathlon, you're probably thinking about the rules. You think about membership and you think about insurance for races, right? Yeah. What we don't think about is the person and persons and people who are on the other side. And for a long time, personally, I really didn't have a good understanding of USA Triathlon. I didn't even know it existed for real until 2020. I know. I just paid the fee and was like, oh, it's a membership fee for us to race. Well, the person who's with me today is the person who can answer any of your questions. They are there to guide you and to make sure you actually have what you need to show up on race day and be successful in sport. And the truth is, we need these people more than we realize, especially this person. Because there's some people who race the sport, and there's some people who race it and who help build it. Today's guest is both. She has completed 13 Ironman race distances. And let me just tell you, out of those 13, she qualified for Kona twice by placing first in her age group. Say what? Oh yeah. She's explored everything from the sprint distance to off-road triathlon and high-altitude endurance sports, and now she serves as race director, and she serves as director of constituent engagement at USA Triathlon. She works at the national level to support athletes and coaches and race directors, while also creating her own community-driven races in the mountains of Colorado. Her journey is what it looks like to fall in love with the sport and then dedicate your life to making sure others can find their way into it too. And with that, I am so excited to welcome to the Try Beginner's Luck audience, Elizabeth Liz Kollar. Liz, welcome to Try Beginner's Luck. How you feeling?
Thank you for that nice introduction. As you were talking about USA Triathlon, I was thinking, yeah, we're about as sexy as the DMV. But we try to be sexier than that. We really do.
I love it. I think it's so important what you do, Liz. And you know, I've told you many times, I really did not have a good understanding of what USA Triathlon does, what it did back when in 2022, when I met you. I was like, what is this? Tell me more. And what I want to do is really break down this barrier of our governing body and who we are as age groupers who need USA Triathlon and should know everything they need to know about sport and to be successful. And so what I would love for you to share as the Director of Constituent Services, share with us what exactly you do and how age groupers can get plugged in.
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I like to think about USA Triathlon and the direction that we're moving in now as really an athlete's partner in their journey in our sport. So, you know, you're standing at the start line at your very first race and you're freaking out because you're really nervous. And we want you to be thinking about the tips and tricks that we provided to you before you got into the water to help calm your nerves. We want to shepherd you through that first event. And then we want to take you through your journey, whether or not you stay doing short distances, whether you move to alternative formats. We have winter triathlon now. We have, duathlon and aquabike, or you go all the way up to the big long distances like an Ironman distance race or what we call ultra distance racing for some of our race directors that have these longer events. We want to be your partner, and we want to be there every step of the way with you. And we want you to feel that you can reach out to us with questions and words of advice, and maybe just a little virtual hand holding over the phone, to get you started on your journey. And that's what we do. The term national governing body, I have sort of a love-hate with it, because on the one hand, yes, we are the national governing body for the sport of triathlon, and we exist because of the Ted Stevens Act that said you shall have a sport that is preparing athletes for the Olympics. But that is such a small part of what USA Triathlon does every single day. It really is focused, unlike many sports, this sport is really focused on age groupers and that age group experience. And that's what we're dedicated to help.
Now I'm curious, Liz, when you were talking about the hand holding, what are some of the questions that you get on a day-to-day basis that may be helpful for this audience?
Oh gosh, it really depends. I mean, outside of just basic, I can't access my membership, which is what a lot of the phone calls are. I mean, I have had amazing conversations with first-time athletes who have just called to ask about what resources we have available. And we've ended up having these amazing conversations about, what it's like to stand at the start line. When you get in the water, if you feel panicky, don't stop. Don't have your day end on the swim. Just take a deep breath, hold on to a kayak if you need to, and then continue on. So the conversations that I have with our age groupers, I love them so much, because not only do I hear the stories, the coulda, woulda, shouldas, because everybody has those, right? But I also get a chance to talk to athletes who are just starting out and curious about the sport. And it's wonderful if I can connect them with a club. I was a member of the LA Tri Club for years, and that was the foundation of my career as an age grouper, and the support that I got with that club. So I get to connect them with clubs. I get to ask them what they're interested in, and connect them with a coach. A lot of times, first timers, when they come to us, they don't realize that they can hire a coach. You don't have to be an elite athlete to use a coach. In fact, if you're like me and you have an extraordinarily busy life, and I'm in a constant state of overextension, I need a coach to kind of help me stay where I need to be and to relax through my training and not let it overwhelm me. So coaches are amazing. So I get to talk to athletes about getting them connected with coaches and clubs, maybe making suggestions for different races. I think one of the biggest mistakes that an athlete does when they first start in the sport is they're like, if I don't do an Ironman, I'm not a triathlete. And trust me, I did it. I mean, my first race was a 70.3 in Buffalo Springs Lake. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I crossed that finish line and said, I'm never doing this again. I hated it so much. And I think what athletes really need to understand is that, sure, there are all these different distances and different formats and things that you can do that are fun and cool. But being an Ironman doesn't define you as a triathlete. You're a multi-sport athlete the minute you cross a finish line, any finish line. I don't care if it is a super sprint distance where you're swimming 100 meters and riding your bike for 5 miles and then doing a 1 mile run, or if you're doing, 140.6. You're a triathlete regardless of those distances. And I think that's one of the things that, especially people starting out in the sport, where they misjudge, is that if I don't do an Ironman, I'm not a triathlete. And honestly, the short distances are so much fun. I mean, the short distances are, you go and you have your fun experience. You talk to people in the transition area, and they're not all wigged out and worried about qualifying for a world championship. They're there to help you. They offer you things. And then you cross that finish line, you go to brunch. I mean, it's amazing. So I tell a lot of first-time athletes, get your feet wet, literally, at a shorter distance before you jump into the longer ones, and your experience will be so much better.
That's solid advice. Try and brunch. That should be a whole thing. Do a short distance sprint, try, then go for a little brunch.
Oh
That is
yeah, and
the
you grab your
perfect
girlfriend.
combination.
You guys all should go up to the sprint, and you do the race together, and then you go have brunch.
So I love that you started your career with the LA Tri Club, and a couple of episodes back, not really a couple, but in 2023, episode 90, we had a talk with Paul Haikime
Oh
and
yeah,
Katie Godek.
yeah,
And
Ikemian.
it was the most hilarious and just engaging conversation. And so you got to be a part of the Cool Kids Club. at LA Tri Club where you got your start. So did you live in LA? Are you still in LA and work remotely? Tell us how'd you get from LA Tri Club to now being director of constituent services?
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you my LA Tri Club story. So I had just moved to Los Angeles from the state of New Mexico, and I was riding my bike on this sort of busy road in Palos Verdes, and I was standing at a intersection, and all of a sudden, this group of people in red, white, and blue. It was red, white, and blue at the time, LA Tri Club colors. They all sort of like surrounded me, and they were all talking to me and asking me questions and come to the swim and do all this stuff. And I was just like completely overwhelmed. But when I got home, I went and learned about it a little more. And I learned just down the street from where I was living was an open water swim. And I went to the open water swim. And I have to tell you, it was the most welcoming experience that I had ever had. I had somebody come up to me and say, "Hey, you look like you're brand new." I can't remember who it was. I think it was a gentleman by the name of Lou Baronis. Came up and said, "Hey, I'm Lou. Come and we're going to run down the beach and then we're going to swim up, and don't worry about the sharks or the dolphins or the seals." It's like the sharks, the dolphins, the seals. Okay, I won't. But that sort of started my time with the club. It was so welcoming and so much fun. And I went to a couple of socials and that was great. But I think what was really impactful for me as part of the LA Tri Club was myself and a woman by the name of Liz Ham and Stella Tong and Tina Robinson. We started something called the Tri Chicks Hill Series. And we started it. First off, it's very dangerous to ride by yourself as a woman in the Santa Monica Mountains. I mean, I don't care if you're packing or not, it's just dangerous. And I was noticing that a lot of the women who were in the club, they were going out on these group rides and they were getting blown up by their boyfriends or their husbands because the guys were taking off really fast and the women were getting blown up and they were having a terrible experience and they weren't getting the endurance they needed to and they weren't getting the bike handling skills. So we started a Tri Chicks Hill Series, which was a series of progressively more difficult rides in the Santa Monica Mountains with the women of the LA Tri Club. And one Saturday, I think we had over 350 women show up to do this bike ride. And it was amazing. And so the faster riders would go up ahead. Then they were instructed to come back down when they got to the top of the mountain and come back down and ride up with some of the slower riders. And it created this wonderful community. And many of the women that I rode with are still dear friends of mine. Like some of the best girlfriends I made were on a bike with the LA Tri Club. And I can't speak enough about what an amazing club it is, but also for the club culture in general. Because if you want to find your tribe, and I think it's really important in our sport that you have a tribe, then, make that effort to go out and talk to local clubs and join them. And you'd be surprised at the community and the networking that you build. After your first bike ride, after your first open water swim, after your first track workout, all of a sudden, they're your peeps.
That is true. There's something very magnetic about training with a group because you're struggling together, you understand, and it is more of an understood. We are connected. There's no separating us now.
Yeah, for sure. One of the cool things about the LA Tri Club is the Tri Chicks rides, we'd be riding up these long sustained climbs, and the conversations would go from bread making to horrible teenage daughters to menopause and the conversation just floated. And it was so great because I guess that was part of the community too, because you didn't realize that you were climbing a long sustained climb because you were talking to your girlfriends.
Not horrible teenage daughters though.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us had them at that time. There was a lot of commiserating.
So Liz, when you moved from New Mexico to LA, is that when you first got into sport or were you in sport prior to?
So I have another story. I don't know if I don't want to go crazy with my stories.
Go crazy. That's where you go crazy.
Right. So my father introduced me to the sport of triathlon, and his story was even more interesting than mine. He was the headmaster of a private school in LA, and he was monitoring study hall for the kids that behaved badly at school. And he confiscated from one of the students that was in study hall a magazine, and the magazine was Triathlete magazine. And so he was reading Triathlon magazine during study hall, and he got really excited about the sport. So my father started in the sport in like 1990 when the day glow shorts were happening and you did a complete wardrobe change between swim, bike, and run. And that's when he kind of started. And so I had the pleasure of watching my father race in Kona, and I got kind of hooked on the sport, but I never really got into it. Like, I didn't have anybody to train with. I didn't have anything to do. And a boyfriend of mine in New Mexico said, I'm going to go do the Buffalo Springs Lake, half Ironman. And why don't we go do it together? And I didn't even think about like training. I didn't have a bike. I didn't have any of that stuff. I went all in. Like, I'm going to buy the bike. I'm going to do all that stuff. Anyway, he and I broke up. So I ended up going to the race by myself with my father. It was my very first ever triathlon. And it was a miserable experience. Like, Marty Greer puts on an amazing race. It was an amazing race, but it was hot and hard, and I was totally unprepared. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was just, in fact, I have this memory of out on the run course, which was about the most miserable experience of my life. At the turnaround, there was this woman at the turnaround, big hair, big Texas hair. She goes, honey, just to let you know, you're halfway done. And when you're finished, you can have a chili dog. And my stomach was so upset. I was just like, I am not going to make it back to this finish line without losing all the booze I put in my system. But so we went and we did the race, and then we went out to dinner and came back, and they were having the award ceremony, and I heard my name being called. And I thought, well, this is weird. So I went up onto the podium, and the event announcer said to me, do you want to go to Lake Placid or Panama City? Now, this was back in the day with Ironman, where you had to go to a qualifying race to get a slot to go to just a regular Ironman event. And there were only two at the time. I think it was Lake Placid in Florida were the only two Ironman. And so if you wanted to race in those events, you had to basically win a slot. And I didn't realize that was what the stick was. I thought I'd won a trip. I was like, well, I've never been to South America or Central America, so I'd like to go to Panama City. And everyone laughed. And I'm like, why are they laughing at me? I'm going to go to Panama City. And they shuttled me into a room, took a check for $400 and said, congratulations, you're racing Ironman Florida. So that's how I got into the sport. And like 3 months later, I was at the start line in Ironman Florida in 2001. So that's how I got my start. And then I moved very shortly after that to Los Angeles. And that's where I got more involved in the sport, especially through the LA Tri Club, and did a lot of racing there. It was fun.
Liz, so you're telling me, and you're telling this audience, that your first race ever qualified you to do an iron distance race either at Placid or Florida.
See, I'm dating myself. I'm truly a dinosaur, if you think about it that way.
You are not a dinosaur, lady. You are not a dinosaur. So,
and the race entry fee was $450. That also dates me.
Well, the $450 definitely, because I'm like, listen, they are charging the whole grip these days for this race. But I think what I'm curious about is, did you have any athletic, like, in order to go and immediately qualify, you had to have some type of, you were an athlete.
I think back in the early 2000s, the sport was just starting, and there were not very many women, for one, racing. It was predominantly male dominated. There weren't very many women in their 40s racing. And so the field was not as competitive. I mean, when I look at my performance at Buffalo Springs, it was slow and hard. And I thought for sure I was the last one to cross the finish line. And, it was a little different then. Now, and there wasn't good coaching, and there wasn't good, we didn't have the science that we have now. And, my bike was not a TT bike made of carbon fiber and, super aerodynamic. It was like a regular aluminum road bike. And, it was a different time in the early 2000s for the sport. So I think I've always had, I'm never going to quit type of attitude. Like, I've always had that. And with that comes, you become an endurance athlete if you have that attitude, right? I'm never going to quit. I'm going to keep going. I don't care if you do a sprint or you do like a marathon or whatever. You're an endurance athlete if you don't quit, right?
Right.
And so I always had that attitude. I don't think I was particularly talented in any of the disciplines. I just think I kind of outlasted everybody else. But I would not, I would not recommend that is the journey for a first timer. Like, do not have your first race be a 70.3. Go and find a wonderful sprint race that you can truly enjoy what the sport is all about, rather than spending the entire day questioning your life choices, which is what I did the first time.
I think everyone questions their life choices when they are doing any Iron distance. It's
Well, you
like,
question a lot more with like 98% humidity and 100-degree temperatures on a run course with not a tree. But that's when you really question them.
Liz, I'm still in awe of your story. And so your first race, you crush it. You go to your first distance, like you go to Panama City, which you thought was Panama in a whole nother country, which I think is hilarious. And you do this race. Could you take us through your first time at the full distance race? Because you mentioned there wasn't really coaching back in the day. There wasn't this technology. And I think not sometimes, in today's modern world, we think we need all the bells and whistles to get the job done. But you talked about the not giving up method of just
Yeah.
outlasting folks. Take us back to that time frame, and you're training for this new unknown distance that you hadn't done before, because you didn't say the race length of the race you qualified for. Now, was that an Olympic?
Well, the Panama City, Ironman, Florida.
No. Buffalo Springs Lake.
Oh,
I think
Buffalo
that was your
Springs
first
was a
one.
70.3.
Oh, so you came out the gate with a
I came out.
70.3.
That's why, I came out of the gate, not to be recommended.
Mm.
But what's really interesting, if I can just share my experience with Ironman Florida, because it was really transformative for me, not because of the distance or the finish line or any of those things. It was in November following September 11th, and we didn't even know if we were going to be able to race. I mean, the planes weren't flying. We didn't know how we were going to get there. And I can remember standing on the beach in my wetsuit on race morning, and the sand, I can still feel it. The sand was really cold on my feet. I remember my feet being really cold. And a woman came up and sang the national anthem, and I could not stop sobbing. And it was this, it was a combination of being sort of overwhelmed with where I was and what I was about ready to do. Overwhelming because of the sadness I felt for what had happened to our country and the changes that we were seeing, basically. I mean, it was 9/11 changed so many things for so many people. And it was just, it was overwhelming and wonderful and frightening all at the same time. And then the gun goes off and you don't think about anything else. And it was actually unlike doing Buffalo Springs Lake, which I was completely unprepared for. I was very prepared for Ironman Florida. I trained with a friend of mine who was also doing it. And so we trained really hard for the 3 months we had in between the races. And I just loved it. I loved every minute of it. I loved the rhythm of the swim with the swells. I loved the pedaling on the bike, just like kind of losing yourself into the bike course. Although I have to tell you, my father came out to be a supporter. And, he's in this like black SUV and he's on the bike course. Back, we'd never allow that now, but he was on the bike course and my daughter was hanging out. She was like 12 or 13. She was hanging out the window cheering for me. That would never happen. Like it would never happen now. I think my father almost killed a couple of riders, but, and then in the run, it was really amazing because it was dark. I mean, in November. So, I mean, I would have been dark anyway, regardless of the time of year, I would have been finished in the dark. But it was so crazy because all you hear are your feet on the pavement. You're sort of spread out by then. You don't really have the sense that you have other participants around you. And it's dark, and it's quiet, and there are no street lights. And then all of a sudden you come around a corner and it's bright and there's cheering and there's music and there's Mike Riley like calling people Ironman, and you can hear it. You're still a mile away from the finish line, but you can hear it. And I will never forget that moment. I will never forget that last mile in a million years. It was something so special. My daughter handed me a bouquet of flowers that I carried across the finish line, and it was great. And then I was hooked. And then, the rest of the story. Way too many races after that. But anyway, that's my transformative Ironman experience.
What an incredible first experience. And that helped to shape who you are today and why you speak from experience when you say, start small and then grow in. Because I think when you start at a smaller distance, you eliminate the one-off. Like, I'm just going to do an Ironman and not do anything else. Or I'm just going to do a full distance and not do anything else. Or I'm just going to do the middle distance, known as the 70.3, and nothing else. It allows you to take like a nice progressive path way
Hmm.
into sport, which gives you more a sense of longevity and belonging because
Yep.
you understand that at each level there's something very different to conquer. And there's no, I think the word I want to say is you don't ever max out.
No, you don't. I think you become a lifer. I mean, it's easy to become a lifer. Vic tells a story. Our CEO, Vic Broomfield, tells the story about how she was in a group of people, and she said, "How many of you are triathletes?" And like one person raised their hand. And then she asked a question. She says, "How many of you have done a triathlon?" And almost the whole room raised her hand. So it's like you have to sort of shift your mind. When you cross that finish line for the first time, and I don't care what finish line it is, you are a triathlete. And you can say you're a triathlete, and you better raise your hand when you're asked, are you a triathlete? Because you are. And if you think about it, the sport, I mean, it's pretty accessible, and it's super, it's becoming more inclusive, and I wish we had more races around the country, but we're working really hard to build those. So people have more opportunities to enjoy the sport. But you need to identify, if you do a race like that, you need to identify yourself as a triathlete, because maybe 2% of the people on this planet can say that. And you should be embracing that and embracing that accomplishment that you've made, whether you raced for an hour or you raced for 16. It's no different. You're still a triathlete.
Couldn't have been articulated better. You are a triathlete the moment you cross that finish
Yeah.
line. Ironman Florida was transformative for you, but then you went on to do 13
And a
others.
whole bunch of short distance racing. Like, I
I
mean,
know I'm going somewhere with this though. I'm going somewhere. I want to talk about qualifying twice in a year for Kona because that's not easy.
no, it's
And then I
not.
want to go back to the smaller
The
distances.
qualifier for that was also back in the day when there were selected 70.3s that had Kona slots. And in this instance, Oceanside
Ah,
70.3 had a Kona slot. And I was racing against this woman. We were talking as we were racing, and she had already qualified. And I knew if I stayed with her, I knew we were in first and second place. And I knew if I stayed with her, I would be able to go to Kona. Because she was going to pass on the slot when it rolled to her. So that's where I got the first slot, was coming in second at Ironman 70.3 Oceanside. And then the second slot was at, can I show my like lethal weapon award? So the second one was at Ironman Arizona in 2005, where I came in first place. And then I qualified again for the second time.
what?
This weighs like 400 pounds, by the way. You will never see another award like this. And that was such a cool experience. I stood on the podium, and I'm trying to remember, there was a retired pro who was in the first place on the men's side. I mean, oh my God, I was a baby then, 45. So a long time ago. But yeah, so that was the year I qualified twice. Yeah. And
Wow.
I had a great experience in Kona. I thought it was wonderful. The first year I had a great experience. Second year, I tore a hamstring like 3 days before the race. And so I walked the entire marathon. And that was interesting. The third time I was there, I raced with my father. I caused a bike crash that broke his hip on the bike. So they pulled him. We DNF'd in T2 because they wouldn't let him, thankfully, go back out on the race course. And the fourth time I did Kona was also with my father. And he had a very bad year personally. He'd lost his mother and had not had the time to train. And we got to mile 13 of the run, and he just wasn't capable of continuing. So we weren't able to finish it then. But it was fun. It was fun to do that with him. I think I shared a picture
Mm.
of the two of us racing together in Kona with you. He got so tired that he started singing Broadway show tunes going down a Lee Drive, and we were being followed by the EMS team because he was like not walking very well. But he was singing. He got them singing with him. So the entire Broadway from the 20s through the 2000s, we sang them all, every single one, to keep going.
Your dad sounds like an incredible human and man to let you caused a crash and broke his hip and he still wanted to race with you. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
triathlon was very important to my father. He was on Team USA for many years. He thinks very highly of Tim Yount. He's done so much time, spent so much time with Tim, and the sport was really important to him. And he's 92 now, so he's not racing, which I think makes him very sad. But he, it was an important part of his life.
had I known all this information, and I think that's the importance of like learning people's stories because it's so much gold. Like I would have totally had your dad here and we could have hear his stories or his battle. Maybe we can set that up because I think that would be really cool to hear, his stories about getting started in 1990 and being able to be on Team USA back when it's heyday because again, sport is still very young. It's under 50 years
Yep.
old. And so we get to build these memories and stories and things that people can come back to for years to come to hear it and be inspired by
Hmm.
it. And that's the importance of sharing our stories so that one, people can learn more about who we are, i.e., in this case, you serving our greater USAT body and hear that you were too an athlete. And so the stuff that you're saying isn't just textbook, it's lived experiences that people should take heed to because you really do understand the entire ecosystem of it all. And what a gift it is to have your dad introduce you to
Oh
this
yeah.
sport.
Oh yeah.
Like that is a sincere
Oh
gift.
yeah. No, I have a wonderful picture of my sister and father and I all in our LA Tri Club gear at a race that we traveled to in New Mexico. We did all three of us together. So it's like amazing memories. And I think that's what the sport does. Again, it's the community of the sport, right? It's an individual sport, but you do it with the community, and the memories that you have from that are, they stick with you forever. I had something come up on my Facebook feed the other day. There were four of us that qualified for Team USA the year they had it in Lake Las Vegas in Nevada. And we all went, and it was like 20 degrees in the morning, and they wouldn't put us in the water. And I have this picture of all of us shivering in the tent, except one of my very, I don't know if I can say this on the podcast, but she's truly a badass. Her name is Lynn Fiedler. She's like crazy. She was the only one who was upset that we weren't getting in the water. It was like 20 degrees. Our lips were all blue, and she's like, I want to swim. So anyway, I remember that really well.
Wow. You have a lot of stories, but you also wanted to share about doing your shorter distance
Yep.
races. And I think it's worth sharing with this audience because, again, we want people to do all distances because all distances matter, but also those shorter distance have an easier entryway to sport and not as many barriers that you have to overcome. Tell us about some of your shorter distance races or memories and identify what a beginner can learn from your shorter distance
Wow. I
experiences.
mean, they're all so different. The really, I mean, an Ironman race is very formula, right? You know what you're going to get at your aid stations. You know what it's going to be all the way through. The shorter distances have their own vibe and
Hmm.
their own culture, and they're also very different. I mean, I can remember driving up in the dark really early in the morning to go to the Malibu Triathlon with my girlfriend Heather, and we were sitting in the car, and our car was shaking in the parking lot because the waves were crashing so hard on the shore. I mean, they were like, they were huge that year. Um, and I remember that about Malibu. I think about the Santa Barbara Triathlon and the experiences we had sort of like going up and camping. I think about Wildflower. Like Wildflower, I mean, what an amazing event. And if you have not done Wildflower, go do it this year. It's coming up fast and furious, and there's like three different distances, and it is such an extraordinary event, and it really does capture the ethos of our sport, I think, in so many ways. I have
Is that in Colorado?
no, it's in Lake San Antonio, California.
Okay, Wildfire in
Yeah,
Lake
and it
San
was,
Antonio, California,
back in the
y'all.
day, I feel like I'm like this old timer, back in the day, Wildflower, it was like the Woodstock of triathlon. And you would go and you would camp, and we would all camp together as a club, and all the clubs would camp together. At one point, there were naked aid stations. I think those have been killed now, but there was back in the day, there were naked aid stations out on the run course. And it was, you would camp together. There were three different distances. It was just a wonderful weekend. And, there are experiences like that all across the country. Like there are grassroots races in every corner. that you can jump into and do with amazing race directors. I feel like I know most of them. So you can call me if any of your listeners want to call me, and I'll tell them what I know about the races. But they're wonderful, and they're wonderful experiences. And it's take your family, go do something different. I think that's one of the reasons why I put my big toe into race directing. I started race directing 3 years ago in this little town in Colorado called Alma, Colorado. It's at 10,500 feet. And I took over a mountain bike race that had like 20 people in it. And I turned it into a dirt festival. So we have duathlon and we have mountain bike races and trail runs and run with your dog and run with your kid and do all those things. And it was the reason why I wanted to do that was to create this grassroots, really cool experience that we have all across the country to sort of expose people who weren't used to that to something that was, like I made all the food the first year. I don't know if I'll do it this year. It's a lot of work, but I made all the food, pasta salad and baked all the cookies, and we had 200 racers. It was really cool. So, I don't think I'll cook this year though. I may have to cater. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see how much energy I have.
Okay, Liz. I keep getting more and more impressed with you. Race director. Wow. But now race director
Yeah,
and
well,
caterer?
when you're these smaller events, the race director is the chief bottle washer and the cook and the athlete services and safety and all those things. And again, I think when you go to these smaller races, the personality of the event director comes through to the event. And I think that's why they're so different. And that's why they're such great experiences. You get to try something different. And I mean, and I mentioned Wildflower just because I was in LA and that reminded me of it. But there are, we have 1,100 races across the country every single year that are just fabulous. They're just wonderful, fabulous experiences. And, if anybody, again, wants to ask me about any of them, I'll share what I know. But they're just just go out and do it. Just go do it. Sign up and go do it. And then have brunch.
And then have brunch. That's the important. Try and then brunch. Okay, we're doing it all day. Okay. You are a community builder at its that's what you do. That's the ecosystem of Liz. You build community with the Tri-Chick Hill Ride, starting from a few, I think maybe you said maybe 4 or 5, to then growing it to 300. You take on this race starting at 20 folks and grow it to 200. What do you think is your secret sauce to growing community? Because community is one of the top reasons why people say that
Yeah.
they try
I think
or they stay
that's a really
trying.
good question because I think community starts with being welcoming and inclusive. And if you can create that environment, they will come. If you are standoffish, you're not welcoming, it's like they're doing you a favor by showing up. You're not going to grow the community. You need to be present with the people around you. When you're like experienced triathletes, when you're in transition in the morning, talk to the person next to you. Find out if it's their first time. If it's their first time, give them a first timer hug. Give them some encouragement to get out there and do the race. Because I guarantee you, whatever you tell them will absolutely change their day. And I think that's what we can all be doing as part of this sport is, let's open our hands up to the people that are showing up and just say welcome. And we're so grateful you're here. And thank you for having this experience with me. And I think if we can do that as a collective community, the sport will continue to grow.
And speaking of continuing to grow, I want to talk about that unknown that people get a little overwhelmed with, and that's a
Yeah.
USAT membership. What is it? Tell us about it. Walk us through why a beginner and those, because we do have a lot of veterans who listen. So shout out to those who keep coming back to sport. It's important
Yeah,
to
it
have a
really is.
USAT
I
membership.
made a joke at the beginning of the podcast about we being as sexy as the DMV because we do ask people to have a membership to race in the sport. But that membership does a lot of different things. I mean, first and foremost, it covers your insurance while you're racing. And it's a pretty great policy. I mean, I had a woman in my trail race trip and like tear apart her knees, and she ended up going to the emergency room, and she was a college student and had no money. Our insurance paid her entire emergency room visit. Like, it took care of all of it. So your membership fee covers your insurance, whether it be an annual fee where you're racing as many times as you want to all year long, or if you're just doing what we call a one day, or we now call a bronze membership, that your insurance is covered there. But I think the most important thing beyond that is that, unlike many other countries on this planet, the US does not pay for the Olympic sports. We have to generate all that money ourselves. And because we're a nonprofit, every single dollar that is generated from membership fees is reinvested back into age group racing. A lot of people say, oh, you guys are just, all you care about is the Olympic team and elite athletes. Well, honestly, those teams, that Olympic team and those elite athletes, which is super exciting. I mean, LA 2028 is around the corner. Let's get excited about the sport of triathlon. But that's funded entirely by our foundation. So everything else, the running of this organization, the youth programming that we have, where we have free youth sanctioning and free youth memberships for any kids that want to come in and race. Our club program that Chad Cunningham runs, that is funded. Tim's NCAA program is funded by age group racing. Our technology that we're investing in to hopefully improve the experience that our athletes have with our organization, all of the education that we're doing. Oh my gosh, we are completely revamping our education. I mean, if you are a first-time athlete and you want to get some tips and tricks about how to do the sport, go into triathlon learning and take a look at all the free courses and free resources that are there. That membership fee is reinvested into the sport that you love. We're not a for-profit company. We're not a for-profit event company that sells insurance. Those dollars, when you become a member, either at a one-day level or at an annual membership, you know that you are investing in the sport. And if you love the sport the way I do and the way I know you do, Mashonda, that investment is critically important because we want opportunities to race. Oh my gosh, the other thing, the money is reinvested in helping grassroots racing. So it's so much more than just that one-day fee. And we really hope that people understand that when you purchase a membership, you get access to really great discounts, and there's a lot of cool things that you can get online at great prices. But really what you're doing is you're investing in the sport, and you should feel really good about it.
And just for those of you who might not have heard it, there's a few ways that you can get your membership. You can do the one-day membership, or you can have a membership for the entire year. And within that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you may have to say the levels, but there are like 2 or 3
Yep.
different levels of membership that comes with a USA team membership. So you have different options. Could you take us into the different tiers of
the first
membership
tier
that
is a
there
silver
is?
membership, and it provides you unlimited racing. Not that you won't have to pay your race entry fees, but you will not have to pay a membership fee each time you race.
We can't
I
race
wish.
free when
Wouldn't that
we
be
get a
great?
membership?
I don't
Come
think our
on.
race directors would appreciate that, but yeah, you can have unlimited racing on one membership. You have access to some pretty great discounts that I mentioned earlier as part of your membership fee. You can download training plans that are offered to members. So depending on where you are in your triathlon journey, you can access training plans online. You get a great deal. I think you can actually get a free Training Peaks account that you can download those training resources to. We will connect you with clubs and coaches if you ask us to. And I think most importantly, you're joining a community. And I think, and again, I'm going to say it again, you should be proud to do that. So that's the silver membership. The gold membership has a few more benefits, and you get like a little premium gift, whether it's a Zoot gift card or it's a set of goggles with a swim buoy. The gift kind of changes all the time, but you get a premium gift as part of that gold membership. And then our platinum level, those funds are reinvested. So if you are aspire to be a Team USA member, or you're a Team USA member, if you buy a platinum membership, your spot fee, which is like a reservation fee for Team USA, is covered. You get access to Zoot discount gift card that allows you to buy your team kit or your parade kit or one of those things. If you join as a platinum member to benefit the foundation, all of the net proceeds from that membership go back to the foundation. So you can either support the foundation, or you can pursue Team USA, or you can just be a platinum member and say, I feel really cool about being at the top of the pile. You get a metal luggage tag, which is cool. It makes a lot of noise when you're like rollerblading through the airport. People go like,
And we, just like a cowbell, we need all the noise to
yes,
announce the
exactly.
arrival of all the
Exactly. You don't want to be
triathletes.
quiet
So
about it. Be loud, be proud.
absolutely, tell the world. You mentioned Team USA. Now, here is where I think warrants a conversation. I speak, and I'm really grateful to have this intersection where I get to sit at, of being able to talk to age groupers and people who are curious. You making Team USA is a
It is.
really cool honor. And just like going to the Olympics, you have people who will go to the Olympics, but then Team USA is like the
Exactly.
Olympics for
Yep.
age groupers, right? So tell us about, and the only way you can qualify is doing shorter races like the sprint and the Olympic race distance, which is very different. But if you have not had an opportunity to do a sprint or an Olympic, one, I encourage you to. But two, Liz, I want to talk about making or
The team.
qualifying for age group nationals. The name was changed, so I'm trying to make sure I have it. It's age group nationals, and then making Team USA and what that
Yeah. Yeah.
pipeline looks like.
It is such a privilege. And I think many of the athletes that strive for USA understand this and celebrate this, but it is such a privilege to represent the US in international competition as an age grouper. Like, it's super cool. And you put your red, white, and blue kit on and you go and you race against athletes from all over the world. And it's a really neat experience. And Tim Yacht, who has managed the team forever and ever, just makes it a fantastic experience too. You qualify for the team in a variety of different ways. As you mentioned, you can go to a national championship and you can qualify there. So for the shorter distances, sprint and Olympic national championship, which is taking place in Milwaukee this year in August, athletes that are racing in that event, they can qualify if they're in the top 18 of their age group. You can go to gravel nationals and cross nationals and qualify for the cross championships. You can go to our long course national championship and qualify for the long course world championship. You can do the winter national championship, which was in Lake Placid this year, and qualify to go to this last year in Italy to do the winter. And you can also qualify through the rankings. So if we don't fill the spots on the team, then it goes to the rankings and we kind of roll down through the rankings.
Well, I think that's good. Thank you so much, Liz, for sharing with us. And what I love most is that we just had a young lady on who went from not knowing, new to triathlon, trying winter triathlon for the first time, and then qualifying for world. So it's possible when you go through different progressions. Well, Liz, thank you so much for being with us. We'll do
Oh,
some
my
rapid
pleasure.
fire quickly, and then we'll let you go because, it's still a little different. It's work time over in Colorado, whereas I'm off and I'm like, oh, we got time. So let's do this. Some quick rapid fire questions for you. Road or trail?
Trail.
High altitude racing or sea level speed?
High altitude. All the way, baby. The higher the better.
Okay. Craziest race conditions you've ever experienced?
Can I share my experience with Armageddon, which is a winter triathlon I hosted this year for the first
Okay.
time? So the name is Armageddon, lived up to its name. We were to have beautiful, beautiful weather for the race. It was a winter triathlon, which was a bike, a ski, and a run at 10,500 feet. They climbed 1,600 feet in elevation in 6 miles. Super hard. 2 days before the race, the winds came in. Race day, we had gusts of wind at 50 miles an hour with a -20 wind chill. And we still raced. I mean, I got permission. I talked to the Park County Search and Rescue, and they said, yeah, if you do this, we can do it. And then I actually, in a panic, called a couple of race directors I know who have had winter events and said, what do I do? I'm freaking out. Like, do I put athletes in this condition or not. And you know what? They all finished. I had 34. That was it. It was a very small race. I had 34 athletes. They all finished. They all loved it. They were a little cold when they finished, but they warmed up fast, and it was great. So I would say the Armageddon conditions were probably the craziest conditions ever.
Wow. Some tough folks. I love it for them. Coffee before training or after?
Before. Yeah. I'm mainlining it before I get out of bed.
One piece of triathlon gear you always recommend?
The one piece that I always
Recommend.
black electrical tape.
Can you say more about that?
I know. So what I will do, because I have a hard time like pulling things out of the back of my shirt when I'm on my bike, I will use black electrical tape to tie my goos onto the front part of my bike, whatever that's called, top tube of my bike. And whether it's mountain biking or a road, I use black electrical tape. It doesn't take off the paint. It's super easy. You just pull it. Yep. I use black electrical tape for everything. That and a safety pin. A safety pin for my timing chip. Even though it has Velcro, it can still be pulled off in the water. And a safety pin is a really cheap insurance policy.
So good. That is so good. Favorite discipline right now? Swim, bike, run, or none?
Bike.
And we don't let people leave without answering this question. Do you pee on the bike or do you get off and take a proper break?
Oh, I would never pee on the bike. I've seen people do it. It just totally grosses me out. Now, I will pee in my wetsuit in the water, but I will not pee on the bike. Nope. Can't do it.
Liz, Kollar, thank you so much for being with us today. It has been an honor to learn a little bit more about your story, which I had no idea, but also to learn a little bit more about what you do as the Director of Constituent Services. So be sure to check her out. She is very accessible and will answer any questions that you may have. We have this saying here at Try Beginner's Luck, whenever you try, you always win. And we believe that true. If you are loving these podcasts and you know people who want to try or are curious, or maybe you have friends who are trying and having a difficult time, or you just have people you love and want to share a good story with, please share this with us. We're on your major podcast platforms and on YouTube and Substack. With that said, my name is Mashonda Miles, also known as Mashonda Shines. Today, we are out. Peace. Bye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode. We need your help so we can continue to try at TBL. So for more information on where you can find and subscribe to this podcast, visit www.trybeginnersluck.com. And don't forget, whenever you try Beginner's Luck, you always win.